The United States has failed black people, and not in some small way either. I'm talking about consistently, systematically, across generations. Every time this country talks about its story, it loves to talk about freedom, opportunity, and the American dream. But when you look at the timeline honestly, black people have been living a completely different version of that story for a long time.
I'm so sick and tired of privileged people who probably haven't even traveled to many countries in the world, acting like America is not the best country in the world to live in, and that we are the only country in the world that has issues.
People will say things like this, but pointing out a problem in this country doesn't mean that we want to leave. It means that we want to fix the problem so life here can be better for everyone instead of one specific group. Because from the very beginning, the foundation wasn't equal. It wasn't fair. And it definitely wasn't built with us in mind. So when people ask why so many black Americans look at the system with skepticism, frustration, or distrust, the answer is actually pretty simple. History left receipts.
What are you saying? We were built on slaves. We created everything. Yeah. Historically, everybody was slaves. If you ever read a fucking book, I don't know who's telling them that they're so oppressed here.
Blacks are still calling us racist, still calling us bigots, still mentioning slavery, still mentioning Jim Crow. They're mentioning all these things of our past, but not looking at what white people has done for them and how they changed everything for them to accommodate them and make them feel more comfortable in our society.
We're never going to stop talking about our history. White people didn't just wake up one day and have a change of heart. The reason why certain laws changed is because black people went through hell to make that happen. And we resisted so much to the point where they were forced to change those laws because they became unmanageable. And when you start lining those receipts up one by one, a pattern starts becoming impossible to ignore. This whole video isn't gonna be about slavery because there were plenty of things that took place after the fact. But I do need to bring it up here so you can follow the point that I'm trying to get across. One of the deepest things slavery did to black people in America wasn't just physical, it was identity. Because when millions of Africans were brought to this country through the slave trade, they didn't just lose freedom. A lot of them lost their names, their languages, their religions, and their connection to their specific people. A lot of black Americans can't easily trace exactly where their family came from before slavery. The paper trail just stops. It's like your story has a missing first chapter.
I have a question. Why are we called African American if we ain't go to Africa? Like, what African part are we? Is it because we're black?
But we from Africa. Who from Africa? I've never been to Africa. But you're African. Your descendants is African, Dad. But you know how far of a descent that is, though. That's a
1900s. And because of that, even something as simple as what we call ourselves can get complicated. Some people say African American, some people say Black American, and some of us just say black.
You're not African. You never been African.
What's so bad about having African descent? My nigga, you're not Cherokee. Like this whole FBA movement, I know I'm gonna get some hate, but bro, it's so stupid to me.
None of those are technically wrong, but the reason there's so many different labels is because our original identity got interrupted. We're trying to describe ourselves after centuries of displacement. And if we're being honest, there's a lot of black folks who quietly feel confused about that sometimes. Some people don't fully know what label feels right.
Do you call yourself black, African American, what? Because I was just watching this video, right? You know, it was this white dude talking about black people and black culture and all the rest of that stuff, right? And in the comments, the girl was like, "Thank you so much for not calling us African Americans." And I was like, and she had a lot of likes to that, and I didn't understand that at all.
Some wonder exactly where their ancestors came from. Some question how much of their history was lost in the process. But a lot of people won't admit that confusion out loud, because depending on who you tell that to, it can be embarrassing. If somebody says, "I'm not sure exactly where my people came from," somebody else might clown them for it, call them ignorant, or say that they should already know.
So, what's your ethnicity?
Black and, I'm black. Black American.
Me too. Oh, you African American?
Black American. I'm not African. Because African, you're from Africa, nigga. I gotta pray for you, gang.
So instead of asking questions, some folks just stay quiet about it. And that silence can create even more confusion inside the community. The fact that there are so many labels lets you know that there's real confusion in our community. You'll even hear different beliefs pop up because of that gap in history. For example, some of us believe our ancestors were already here before Europeans arrived, long before colonization even started. Other people disagree with that and point back to the transatlantic slave trade.
Cut it out with the labeling ourselves of fundamental black Americans. What that actually means is fundamental dead Americans. we're not that either. We're none of what they have said we are. We are indigenous Americans, period.
The fact that those debates even exist shows something important. When history gets erased, people start trying to rebuild it themselves. They search for answers wherever they can find them. Because identity matters. Knowing where you came from matters. It gives people a sense of grounding. And when that grounding gets taken away through slavery, family separation, and centuries of erased records, the effects don't just disappear. They echo across generations. So a lot of what you see today, the different labels, the debates about ancestry, the curiosity about roots, it's not random. It's the result of a history where our original identities were disrupted before we ever had the chance to preserve them. Another big example of how America has failed us is money, wealth, economic power. Right now in America, the median white household holds about 10 times more wealth than a black median household. 10 times. And people love to act like that gap is just a result of bad decisions or a lack of effort. But the numbers don't tell that story.
Stop blaming everything on systemic racism just because things aren't the way that you want them to be. Step 3. Stop talking about oppression as if black people are the only race of people that have been oppressed. Jews have been oppressed for millennia and they seem to be getting on okay.
I know a ton of white people that are as lazy and sorry and probably worse than black people I know. And I would not hire them because they're lazy and they're sorry and they're pathetic. And that has everything to do with their bad choices and their personal responsibility.
For decades, black families were locked out of the biggest wealth-building tool in American history, home ownership. Banks literally drew red lines around black neighborhoods and labeled them too risky to invest in. This practice became known as redlining. That meant black families couldn't get mortgages in the same way that white families could. So while white families were buying homes, building equity, and passing that wealth down to their kids, black families were often stuck renting in areas that were intentionally underinvested. And that was policy.
Day 10 of exposing black history because it just didn't even happen. So we've all heard about redlining, right? The evil racist policy where banks drew a bunch of red lines around black neighborhoods so they couldn't get loans, they'd be trapped in poverty forever. This is the go-to example of systemic racism. It explains everything from wealth gaps to urban decay. It's all over the media, it's taught in schools. Well, it turns out it's just a lie.
I'm not gonna torture you and play that video, but everything he's saying is BS. This is the same white person that will see you walking down the street and wave and smile at you and act like they're your friend, but the whole time they're on the internet making videos like this. And even today, the effects are still visible. Wealth compounds over generations. If your grandparents were blocked from building wealth, your starting line in life is already different. Then add employment discrimination on top of that. For nearly 70 years, black workers have consistently been about twice as likely to be unemployed as white workers. 70 years of the same pattern.
I learned today, if it is a name that does not sound white, we are to move it to the completed tasks. We then note your application as moved due to name standards. Now it's my first day, so I ask, what does that mean? I'm black, I'm very light-skinned, obviously. And she says,
At some point, you have to stop pretending that's random. Another place where the gap becomes obvious is the criminal justice system. Black Americans have been over-policed, sentenced, and incarcerated differently for a long time. Not just historically, but even now to this day. Studies have shown that black men receive federal prison sentences that are nearly 20% longer than white men who committed similar crimes. Same crime, but a different punishment.
It's time to speak up. I have been involved in the criminal justice system since 1997. I've been a prosecutor and I've been a defense attorney. And if anyone out there thinks that our criminal justice system is blind to the race of the person in front of it, it's because you've had zero experience with the criminal justice system. I can tell you from personal experience that if my client that I'm representing is black or brown, I have to work twice as hard to make sure that their rights are protected.
And then you have the war on drugs and the war on crime, policies that hit black communities especially hard during the 20th century. Entire neighborhoods were flooded with aggressive policing and harsh sentencing laws. The result was mass incarceration on a scale the world had never seen before. The largest prison expansion in American history. Families torn apart, fathers locked away for decades, communities destabilized.
What happened to me happened to a lot of people that look like me, right? There were a lot of people who either grew up with a parent who was a crack addict or a parent who was incarcerated for selling crack. Like, that crack epidemic era destroyed so many of our families.
And even after someone serves their sentence, the punishment doesn't always end there. Criminal records make it harder to get jobs, housing, or even vote in some states. So the system doesn't just punish individuals, it creates long-term consequences that ripple across generations. And people downplay that like it's not that big of a deal. But those things really shape how you see the world, especially at a young age. Then there's police brutality.
Exit the vehicle now! Exit the vehicle! Show me your hands. Here.
I'm here. What is your reason, sir? What is your reason?
Too many cases where black people die at the hands of law enforcement and accountability feels non-existent. And when communities repeatedly watch that happen without real consequences, trust disappears. That's part of why movements like Black Lives Matter gain so much momentum.
Let's just be honest here. BLM is a racist, terrorist organization.
All lives matter. Prove me wrong.
He's saying prove me wrong like we supposed to sit here and fight to change his opinion. Man, watch out. People weren't imagining the problem. They were responding to it. Education is another area where the playing field was never level.
Do you Negroes feel bad that you are very reactionary, no self-restraint, no regard for other human life, pretty dumb, probably 10 points lower IQ than white people, plus you have that sub-Saharan gene which makes you a jungle bunny and an animal. So that's why you're having a hard time getting by in society. If you just looked at your own behavior, maybe you could help fix it. I don't know. I don't think you just want to. I think you just like living like that.
Even though segregation was technically outlawed decades ago, many school systems today are still deeply segregated by race and income. Schools in predominantly black neighborhoods usually receive fewer resources, outdated materials, and less funding overall. So from the start, many black students are navigating a system with fewer tools. And when they make it to college, the financial burden can be heavier too. Black undergraduate students graduate with about 7,000 more student loan debt on average than white students. That might not sound huge to some people, but debt shapes life decisions. It affects whether you can buy a house, start a business, or build savings. So again, the pattern repeats. More barriers, less margin for error. And when you zoom out, you start realizing how these systems stack on top of each other. Economic barriers lead to education gaps. Education gaps affect job opportunity. And job opportunities affect wealth. Everything connects. Health is another area where inequality shows up in real life. Black Americans on average have lower life expectancies than white Americans. That gap isn't because black bodies are somehow different. It's tied to access. Access to healthcare, healthy environments, and economic stability. Then there's maternal mortality. Black women in America are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. 3 to 4 times. That's a lot. And this includes women who are educated, wealthy, and insured.
They come in and tell me, we cannot give your daughter your breast milk because we found drugs in your system. I say, well, that's impossible because I don't do drugs. They say it was marijuana. I say that is also impossible because I don't smoke marijuana. They say, well, we found it in your milk and we cannot give her your milk. We're going to give her this formula. We need you to sign a paper for this formula we're going to give her. I say, fresh out of surgery, might I add, C-section, having these conversations. Daughter is 1 pound. I'm stressed out. They're telling me I'm a drug addict. Don't do drugs. So they then come in, a bunch of white women come in and say, well, do you eat lemon poppy seed? No, I don't. Actually, I'm actually vegan and I don't do any drugs. They then say, well, maybe your neighbors gave you some brownies. Maybe your neighbors made some brownies and it had weed in it and you didn't know. They say, well, we found it in there. I said it couldn't be mine. So now I am fresh out of surgery from being cut open on my stomach, being told by all of these white women that I live in a community that makes brownies and drugs me. Right? Like I'm being drugged by my neighbors unknowingly, and I'm also doing drugs while pregnant. This is all being told to me fresh out of being cut open, but the child that's 1 pound, don't know if she's going to survive. No medical care attention. It took for the hospital, the president of the hospital, to be called, demanding to retest my milk or there's going to be a lawsuit. They wanted to test a formula out on my daughter And if you don't know this, trials and tests and studies are done a lot on black babies because unknowingly they think that black people are uneducated, and they get you in a state where you are in survival mode and you don't take a second to pause and think and make an informed decision. Well, guess what? They tested my milk, and the demand was you need to retest the same milk. You need to retest it. And guess what? There was no marijuana.
That tells you the problem isn't just poverty, it's systemic. Environmental racism adds another layer too. I've touched on this before. Lots of black families are located closer to highways, industrial plants, and hazardous waste sites. That means higher exposure to pollution and environmental hazards, higher asthma rates, higher health risks, and lower quality of life. Again, not random. When patterns repeat across different areas of life, it starts looking less like coincidence and more like design. Voting is supposed to be one of the main ways citizens influence the direction of their country. But even that hasn't always been straightforward for black Americans.
Been here for 3 hours, 4 or 5 hour wait. 5 hours.
This is way too long for us to stay and vote.
How long have you waited in line here?
About 3.5 hours.
Have you decided you can't you can't take it anymore? Are you going to go home?
I'm hurting. I'll be back. I got to go take some medicine.
It was really good. The lines weren't too long and everyone was super helpful.
We don't hardly ever have to wait here. It's always a pleasant experience up here.
After the Civil Rights Movement, the Voting Rights Act was supposed to protect access to the ballot. And for a while, it helped. But new tactics slowly started showing up. Strict voter ID laws, polling locations disappearing in certain neighborhoods, district lines drawn in ways that weaken the voting power of black communities. And that's what we call gerrymandering. And then there's felony disenfranchisement. In several states, people with felony convictions lose their right to vote, sometimes permanently. Because of the disproportionate incarceration rates we talked about earlier, that policy affects black Americans at a much higher rate. Right now, roughly 1 in 13 black adults have lost their right to vote because of these laws.
So a person can get indicted and run for president, but I get indicted and I can't vote for a president? Why are we talking about that? Why that's not a topic?
Serious question. Why can't felons vote?
So political power gets reduced in ways that aren't always obvious. But when you connect the dots, the impact becomes clearer. Another factor people don't talk about enough is the role media played in shaping how the country sees black people. For decades, news outlets and entertainment industries pushed narratives that portray black communities primarily through crime, poverty, and dysfunction.
Quality of life has often been compared to that of third world countries. Shanties line narrow streets, raw sewage wades in shallow ditches. Condemned housing has been left standing only to give these poor black people temporary shelter.
They shaped public perception. They influence policy decisions. It affects how people interact with us in everyday life. When the same stereotypes get repeated over and over, they start feeling normal to people who never actually lived around black communities. And that narrative has real consequences.
Yeah, chimp's gonna chimp, okay? And it's on display here. Even when they celebrate, how do they celebrate? They pretend like they're stealing stuff. Oh my gosh, because that's like the only way they really know how to celebrate. Yeah, low IQ chimp shit. Chimp City bitch on freaking steroids. Holy crap, on freaking fentanyl. Hashtag shout out Saint Floyd.
Since you showed that, it's only right that I return the favor. You're lucky I can't show fights on YouTube, but I got the next best thing.
Open your bag. I'm opening it. If you'll get off of me, please. This is all ours. Take it off. Get off of me, please. Take it off. Get off of me, please. Take it off. You can't just steal my stuff. Bye. Get out. Go. Get out. Not all yours. Those are ours. Are you kidding me? Oh, sorry. Bye.
When a group is constantly framed as dangerous, irresponsible, or problematic, it becomes easier for the public to support policies that harm that group. Media didn't create racism by itself, but it definitely helped reinforce it. Another strange thing happening recently is the push to remove or to limit the teaching of black history. As of late 2025, hundreds of books written by black authors have been banned from schools and libraries across the country. Some reports put that number around 591 books. At the same time, certain government websites and school curriculums have started removing or minimizing content about slavery, racism, and the civil rights era.
Philadelphia's Independence National Historical Park has taken down an exhibit on slavery in line with President Trump's executive order calling for, quote, restoring truth and sanity to American history, end quote. NPR recently reported that the National Park Service was ordered to remove any books from its museums or gift shops that cast America in a negative light.
A lot of Black people enjoyed being slaves back when slavery was a thing.
Well, how do you know that Black people enjoyed being slaves?
I mean, it's just in history. I've read about a lot of Black people not only participated in capturing slaves, but a lot of Black people enjoyed being slaves. Because of course, when you're really? Brought up doing something like being a slave your whole life, it's all you know. I'm sure a lot of slaves probably enjoyed it and were happy because that's the only lifestyle they were aware of.
And that's one of the reasons why we need those books. And when history gets watered down like that, it changes how future generations understand the country. If people never learn about the systems that created inequality, they'll assume inequality must be caused by the people experiencing it. So history erasure doesn't just affect education. It reshapes public understanding of reality itself. When you line all of this up, slavery, economic barriers, unequal justice, education gaps, healthcare disparities, voter suppression, media narratives, and history erasure, it points to a picture that's difficult to ignore. None of these things exist in isolation. They stack on top of each other. That's why a lot of Black Americans view the system with skepticism. Not because we're negative, not because we hate America, but because we've watched the same patterns repeat for generations. The US didn't just fail Black people once, it failed us repeatedly. And until that history is fully acknowledged and addressed, a lot of the conversations about equality will keep circling the same question. Not whether the gap exists, but why the country keeps pretending it doesn't.